Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be showing how I make my sourdough pizza crust with fresh milled flour. So here I have my scale under my bowl and I start by weighing out my wheat berries. I'm using hard white wheat to make this. You could also use hard red wheat or experiment with different grains. I also want to note that I am making 4 pizza crusts, so if it looks like a lot, that's because it is. I am making more for my large family. I'm going to mill this in my Nutrimil Classic grain mill, and I don't mill on the finest setting usually unless I'm making some kind of a pastry. And so once I get it in my grain mill, I'll show you guys where I put my settings. So there's the grain and there is my knob. It's not on the finest setting. While my grain is milling, I'm going to add my water into my mixer bowl. Again, I always have my scale under the mixing bowl to weigh out my ingredients. I find that weighing your ingredients always produces the most consistent results. And after I put in my water, I then add my starter. This is a starter made with fresh milled hard white wheat. And now I'm adding oil. I am using olive oil. And then after my oil, I'm going to add in a little bit of honey. The honey is optional. You don't have to add any kind of sweetener to pizza crust, but I do add it sometimes. Now I'm going to add in my fresh milled flour. And so I'm just brushing off the excess flour from the inside bowl of my Nutrimil Classic, and I'm going to put all of my fresh milled flour into the bowl there, and I'm going to transfer this to my mixer. I am intentionally leaving out the salt. So here I have my ingredients in the bowl, and I'm going to mix this just until the flour is fully incorporated, and then I just allow it to sit covered for at least 20 minutes. Sometimes it might be up to an hour or so. And while that's sitting, I am going to go ahead and measure out my salt. I intentionally delay the salt because salt tightens the gluten. And so I find that it just slightly shortens the kneading time when I add it into the dough during the kneading process. And so here it's been 20 minutes, so I throw the salt in on top and I go ahead and knead my dough. I'm going to go ahead and knead until the dough becomes smoother and I get a nice window pane. If you are making a large batch and you have maybe a Bosch mixer, I would recommend to use water that's on the cooler side because sourdough can easily overproof in a mixer that has the motor on the bottom. It does heat up the dough a little bit. Okay, so now that my dough is done kneading, I am getting it out onto my countertop because I like to shape it into a neat ball before I put it into my oiled container. So I'm just going to go ahead and gather the dough together into a neat ball and also just do a quick window pane test to make sure that I have good gluten development. So we have a really great window pane there, so I know that the dough is good and ready to sit and rise. So I'm oiling my container. I like using a straight edge container, especially for sourdough. And I'm going to put that in there, and I like to mark the side of the container so I can easily see how much the dough has risen. So we want to allow this to rise until it has doubled in size, or at least almost doubled in size. We don't want it to go over double. Mine actually went a little bit over and it did overproof just a little bit, but it still came out great. If you can see the little holes at the top and how it's flattened out, you can tell by that it has overproofed just slightly, but it will still come out great. And so now I'm weighing out my dough because I am going to be dividing it into 4 equal portions. So I put my whole container on the scale and then I remove the dough and then I put the container back on the scale so that I can get the weight of just the amount that's been removed, which is the amount for the dough. You don't have to weigh it out exactly. Usually I will just eyeball it, but on this day I decided to go ahead and weigh it out to have 4 equal portions. I am now oiling my pan. I'm gonna divide my dough and allow it to sit until I'm ready to put my pizzas together. So there's my dough. It's not super smooth as you can see because again, mine did overproof just a little bit, but because we're making pizza and not bread, it doesn't have to rise super high in the oven. It still comes out great with great flavor. Now I'm gonna let this rest for at least 30 minutes so that the gluten can relax and be much easier to press out. If you're only making one pizza dough, you can completely skip the step for dividing and go straight into pressing out your pizza. So here I have my cast iron pan and I just lightly oil it. Here is my dough. It has spread out because it has been sitting for around 45 minutes to an hour. It did sit for longer than the 30 minutes. Again, I'm a busy mom of 8, so the food sometimes has to wait. So I am just gently pressing out. I try to keep it into a nice ball when I set it into the cast iron without manipulating it too much. And then I just gently start pressing it outward, as you can see here. And I just press it all the way to the edges of the pan. And it presses out very easily after it's been resting. Now your pizza crust is ready for your toppings. Go ahead and top your pizza and bake at 450 for about 15 to 18 minutes. Thank you for watching.